Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you.
I'm excited about this series I'm about to start. Like right now, I'm starting. I'm calling it The Four Mantras for Living. It comes from the American anthropologist Angeles Arrien. Let me just say a little bit about the way Unity started. That our founders and all the New Thought founders, they not only studied the Christian scriptures and mostly focusing on the teachings of Jesus from a metaphysical understanding, but they also sought the wisdom of the religions from the East and other faith traditions because they understood that there is what's called the perennial truth, the golden thread, where the mystics of all these great faiths agree about the presence and power of the one God. Last week we had some of our pilgrims who went on this spiritual retreat we took to Bali, Indonesia, and even though we had different garb and different clothing when we were there, our guides were always so quick to point out that we believe in one God. And you see all these different manifestations representing different qualities, but there's only one. And that's what our teaching is founded upon. And because we know there's only one God, we can how do I want to say this? We can open the doors to other traditions, recognizing that we will have discernment about that which is useful and truthful and supportive of our spiritual walk. It doesn't mean that we're in any way any danger of, I grew up in a very fundamentalist household where there was one way, and it's the way our church did it. And anybody that didn't do it like that, they were suspect. Did anybody else grow up with that? Is it just, so I don't have to spend too much more time on that, but I'm just trying to give a little context here for why we bring in other teachings into Unity, because there's only one source of all truth, and it comes to us beautifully in different ways. Back to Angeles Arrien. She did a similar thing to what our founders did by seeking, they really sought the wisdom of the great minds of the ages that stood head and shoulders above the common thinking. But what she did instead is she went to the indigenous and the native first peoples all over the world and looked for that common sense, for the beautiful ways of being by the people who live closest to earth and to nature. And she wrote a wonderful book called The Fourfold Path. And that's what I'll be teaching on this month in May. And she really summarized it in 4 common phrases that we actually hear quite a bit, as she put them together in this way. So I'm going to just go ahead and share those with you. What she calls the way of the warrior is show up. That's what we're talking about today. The gift of just really being present. It takes courage sometimes to really show up. Next week, we're going to be talking about pay attention. Paying attention to what the heart has showing us in terms of meaning. And this is the way of the healer. The third week, we're going to talk about tell the truth. Now, this is different from be impeccable with your word, which we studied in January with Don Miguel Ruiz and the 4 Agreements. It's similar but different. But what this is the way of the visionary. Sometimes we have to tell the hard truth about what we're facing so that we can find the way forward. It's a visionary thing to tell the truth. And then the last is be open to, but not attached to outcome. And Angeles calls this the way of the teacher. Anybody else have any issues with being attached to outcome? It's my biggest issue. I think things ought to go the way I think they ought to go all the time. Have you noticed that doesn't usually work out? So anyway, we'll give that talk on Memorial Day weekend. Today I want to start with show up. I thought that would be an appropriate title for our volunteer appreciation today as well too. But before that, I have to tell you something happened this week. I was in McDonald's and I ate a kid's meal. And his mom got so mad at me. Good, right? That's from my friend Liz Luoma. I didn't really do that. It's a joke. She's posting all these great little two-line jokes. Here's another one that I really liked. Sometimes I am amazed at how brilliant I am in my actions and my thinking. And sometimes I try to get out of the car without unbuckling my seatbelt. Anybody can relate to that? Yeah. Being a human being is a mixed bag at best. And I am amazed at, now I've been in this teaching for over 30 years. Somebody's waving at me out there, hey, fella. And so I get easily distracted in the middle of giving a sermon. See there? I'm just so human. Look, a bird. Squirrel. Exactly. Thank you, Richard. I need simple reminders about the way that I need to be living. And so these 4 ideas, just repeat after me. Show up. Pay attention. Tell the truth. Don't be attached to results. Can you imagine how much freer we would be in our life if we would just remember those all the time? But we don't, because we're human. And also, in unity, we teach this oneness principle, non-duality. Most of the Western religions, including the way most people practice the teachings around Jesus, called Christianity, they're dualistic, that there is an earthly or a fallen realm, and there is the heavenly spiritual realm. And what we teach is more akin to what the Eastern religions teach, is that there's only one presence, one power, one reality. We're part of it. It's non-dual. But we have bodies, or has anybody else noticed that we have bodies? Tara Brach, the great Buddhist teacher, she says that because of the body, we're going to fall out of oneness back into duality 100 times every day. It's just what we do. Because I'm here, my body is contained, here's me, and then there's everything out there. I'm not connected, here's where I end and all that. It's true from the relative perspective, but from the absolute truth, we know that there is only one presence, one power. There's only one thing ever happening. It's the life of God. I'm a part of it. And so what we seek to do is to remind ourselves daily, weekly. We develop practices that put us back in touch with this truth, that there's no enemy, there's no other. I am one with all that is, because it is so easy to forget. And so I thought this idea of show up would be a great thing for us to talk about, because it's the way we show up, not only for ourselves, but really for each other, that makes the difference. In case you didn't know this, we have evolved in human culture, and in times we now have the access to more communication, more information than any other generation of human beings on the planet. In some ways, we are more connected than human beings have ever been. And at the same time, we are more isolated and more lonely than human beings have ever been. And when Dr. Angeles Arian was studying the native people, they didn't have the luxury of being isolated. Everyone had to do their part so that the tribe, so that the clan could stay together and be healthy and whole. And that necessity of connection has a lot of wisdom that we can access now. In tribal culture, isolation means death. That we must depend upon one another so that our family groups, so that our people will survive. We depend upon each other. Another great anthropologist, Margaret Mead. Years ago, Margaret Mead was asked by a student what she considered to be the first sign of civilization. And the student expected that she would talk about fish hooks or clay pots or grinding stones. But no, Mead said the first sign in civilization in an ancient culture was a femur, thigh bone, that had been broken and then healed. She explained that in the animal kingdom, if you broke a leg, you died. That's simple. You can't run from danger, you can't get to the river for a drink or hunt for food. No animal survives a broken leg long enough for a bone to heal. But a broken femur that healed is evidence that someone has taken the time to stay with the one who fell, has bound up the wound, has carried the person to safety, and has tended to the person through recovery. Helping someone else through difficulty is where civilization starts. Another really big brain thinker, Jonathan Haidt, he talks about our nearest biological relative, the chimpanzee, but he said the difference between chimpanzees and humans, you will never see two chimpanzees carrying a log together. Our great advancement in evolution is that we know how to be a part of a group. There are other animals that do too. Think of wolves and others. But the way that we have these big brains and we can gather together to pool our energy to help the collective, it is the most powerful thing that has been seen on earth yet. Powerful for good and powerful for destruction, in case you haven't noticed. And we have lost sight of some really important gifts that this simple reminder of show up is trying to offer us today. This teaching is not new. I knew that I was going to be sharing this parable of Jesus today, and I reference it at least twice a year. It's one of the most powerful. I'm going to share with you the Good Samaritan. And Reverend Barbara Brown Taylor, she says, when people say that's my favorite parable, I say, I know that they haven't understood it. See, for us, the word Samaritan has a really positive connotation. We name hospitals after that. It's like, that's the hero of the story, right? But in Jesus' day, to his Jewish audience, the only equivalent that we could really say was if Jesus were teaching in Israel today, he would say, the good Palestinian Hamas member. Think about how that would land. And in a conservative church, to say, the good gay person. How would that land? To be in a more progressive church and say, the good MAGA Republican. Oh, that one got a stir. It was confrontational to talk about the Samaritans this way. I'm just going to go and read there. It's only 12 verses. I normally just kind of paraphrase, and you all know that Jesus didn't speak English, right? Okay, we're clear on that. So this is a translation many, many hundreds of years after of what was an oral tradition. Somebody wrote this down, but I do believe that this story does come from that wonderful rabbi, Jesus of Nazareth. This comes from the Gospel of Luke. On one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. Teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life? What is written in the law? He replied. How do you read it? And on that note, a rabbinical student talked to his teacher one day and he said, why is it every time I ask a rabbi a question, he answers me with another question? The rabbi got very calm and still, bowed his head for a moment, a long moment, raised up and looked at his student with such compassion in his eyes, and he said, why shouldn't a rabbi answer every question with another question? So Jesus asked, what does the scripture say about how to attain eternal life? And the expert in the law replied, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. You have answered correctly, Jesus said. Do this and you will live. But he wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, and who is my neighbor? And that's where the plot thickens. If you're dualistic in your worldview and your spiritual tradition, it's okay to have others that are not your neighbor. I believe Jesus of Nazareth was a non-dual teacher. Because of this story that he tells next is so crazy. It's so outside of every acceptable social norm that Jesus is pointing us to something that I think is an uncomfortable truth, even for us today. In reply, Jesus said, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, they beat him, and they went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too, a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, he passed by on the other side. And a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. He then put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day, he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said, and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have. Jesus turned to the expert in the law and asked, which of these do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers? And he replied, the one who had mercy on him. And Jesus told him, go and do likewise. This is radical for Christian theology. Because in Christian theology, as it's generally taught, it's not our works that we're saved by. It's what? Our faith. What we believe is what matters. And Jesus just told the complete opposite of that. He said, it's what you do. Basically, that your beliefs aren't worth anything unless they lead you to neighborly action. This is radical. And the first two characters that came by, they were highly respected in Jewish culture. The priests and the Levites were the assistants to the priest. These were the people that were most respected, they're supposed to do the right thing all the time. They follow the law. And as a matter of fact, here's how it gets even more radical. The reason they wouldn't have helped someone who had open wounds, because that was against the Jewish law. They couldn't do that. So in thinking they're doing the right thing by God, they are ignoring the broken person in front of them. It's so easy to otherize, to demonize, to awfulize other people who are not my people. And the next step, it's just a short journey to dehumanization. And you know what happens when we start dehumanizing other human beings? Holocausts, wars, genocides. This is where this kind of divisive thinking, this non-dual perspective, it will lead us to destroy ourselves. But of course, we don't think we're destroying ourselves. We think we're destroying the other. And Jesus, so beautifully and so confrontationally and so radically said, no, that's not the way this thing works. He was not a very good Protestant. He was not a very good Christian. As a matter of fact, if you didn't know it, Jesus wasn't a Christian. And he was telling us the way we show up means everything. And if we don't demonstrate what we believe, then maybe we don't really believe it after all. And here's where it gets really quiet in this room. How many of us, if we were tried in a court of law, did you treat all of the people that you've come in contact with this week as your neighbor, as a reflection of your own kinship with God? How many of us would be convicted on those charges? How many times have we looked away? How many times have we said, not my problem, not my circus, not my monkeys? It's hard. And the truth is, it's too much. We can't solve every problem before us. We can't, I don't even know what to say about the Palestinian, the Hamas-Israel war right now. It's so awful. It's so awful. And I do know that I'm being pressured to pick a side. And I have people on both sides of it who are asking me to pick a side and to speak for that side and against the other side, and I'm not going to do it. And my heart is breaking. But what I'm trying to do with at least that war is just look at it and see that these are people. And if you can't see that the people, the Israelis who were attacked on October 7th were wronged, and it's wrong, and if you can't see that what the Israeli military is doing to the Palestinian children and women, if you can't see that that too is wrong, then what's wrong with us? These things are not mutually exclusive. We can see that their great harm is being done. And it's okay to not have the answer. But it's not okay to pick a side and think that we've got it all handled in our heart and mind. Thank you. Because we don't. This is a hard teaching. Living our oneness means that no one is not my neighbor. No one. Next month, you're going to be seeing something you've never seen before at Unity of Houston. We're going to have rainbow flags all up and down the boulevard. Thank those of you. Before you get excited, it's going to put us in a side conversation for a lot of people. We've picked a side. We're not. We have decided as a leadership that, and by the way, this is a little bit of a marketing conversation. So just so you know, based upon our spiritual principles, There was a Pew Research poll last year, the largest one done on why people are leaving organized religion in years and years. And people are leaving organized religion in numbers never before seen in Western culture, and including America. It's happening in all the mainline denominations. It's happening in Unity. It's happening everywhere. The number one reason people are leaving traditional churches is because of LGBTQ treatment. They are not all gay and lesbian and trans who are leaving, but they have an uncle, they have best friends who are, and they're no longer willing to be a part of a spiritual organization, of a spiritual tradition that otherizes the queer community. So why we're going to go all in for Pride at Unity of Houston this year is because we want people to know where we stand. We want people to know that gay people are welcome here. Trans people are welcome and celebrated here. And it's a way for us to put ourselves out there as being, when we say everyone belongs here, we mean it. Now, not every behavior. We reserve the right to ask people to go take that behavior other places. I will guarantee you there are people that be real mad at me when they see those flags. And I'm going to get some really hateful emails. And you might get questioned about, why do you go to that church? Is that a gay church? You will. And so what I'm asking us into that conversation is to hold the space of inclusivity, to hold the space of love, and we'll see what happens. I mean, we always celebrate Pride at Unity, but we're going in big this year. So just so you know, when you drive down the avenue and you see those flags, Michael warned me back in May that was going to be happening. And if you have an issue and you would like to talk to me about it, I'm willing to have any conversation with you that you want to have. Everyone is my neighbor. The last point I want to share before we really celebrate our volunteers today is I want you to be an illuminator. Would you like that? That feels more like Unity, doesn't it? Being an illuminator. This comes from David Brooks' new book, How to Know a Person, The Art of Seeing Others Deeply and Being Deeply Seen. Beautiful book. Just amazing. If you don't know David Brooks, he was the token conservative columnist for the New York Times op-ed page for many, many years. And he still is very conservative in many of his values, but he really has had an awakening around our need for people, our need for connection, a need for a spiritual basis. He's a wonderful writer. You might know him from the PBS NewsHour. This is what he says. In every crowd, there are diminishers and there are illuminators. Diminishers make people feel small and unseen. They see other people as things to be used, not as persons to be befriended. They stereotype and they ignore. They are so involved with themselves that other people are just not on their radar screen. Illuminators, on the other hand, have a persistent curiosity about other people. They have trained themselves in the craft of understanding other people. They know what to look for and how to ask the right questions all the time. They shine the brightness of their care on people, and they make them feel bigger, deeper, respected, lit up. When we live from unity, from oneness, from non-duality in our perspectives, whoever we meet, we just get to shine on them. I see God in you. I see God in you. I see the light of possibility and love and overcoming all obstacles. I see it in you. And what happens to the person who is seen like that? They're going to respond. They may not understand it, and maybe in a way you can't see, but it will change them. It will change them. So if we're going to show up as spiritual beings who practice a non-dual faith of inclusivity, of celebrating our diversity, we're going to have to learn to shine on people. And you don't always have to have the right words. I mean, people have been saying, why can't I explain what unity is? It's just, there's that, we were once chastised for being that love everybody church. I wish. That's what I'm asking us, is to step into that. But what we are is a non-dual teaching based upon the messages that Jesus of Nazareth and other great masters brought to earth. We want to be a part of the healing of humanity through this consciousness of oneness. And you know, you don't have to do great things. Mother Teresa said that. There are no great things, only small things done with great love. And that's all you have to do. And sometimes all you have to do is show up. In David Brooks' wonderful book, he tells the story, I want to get her name right because it's just such a powerful story. Nancy Abernathy. She was a teacher in medical school. And it was a specific, I don't remember what kind of course she was teaching. But early in the course, she always had the students bring family pictures. It was a way that they could get to know each other so that they could really just connect. In that year of teaching, her husband died unexpectedly at 50 years old while cross-country skiing. And she was grief-stricken, as you can imagine, to lose a husband so young. But she got through the year, and at the end of the year, she told her students that she didn't know how she was going to handle that day of class in her next term, where she was asking people to share their family photos. She didn't know how she could share a picture of her beloved husband without falling apart. But the school ended, the term ended, and over the summer it happened, and then she came back to start the new class, and it was that day. And she decided she was going to show up and do the best she could, as she was going to show pictures of her husband. She walks into the class, and she's ready to do this, and then she has a sense something is wrong. There's not the right number of people in this class. And she recognizes that not only were her new students there, but all of the students from last year were there. Just to be there. Just to be there. That's all they had to do to change her life. You are invited to stand up, to show yourself, to show up in community. That's what we do. And you don't have to have the right words. You don't have to understand the theology. You don't have to do big things. You just get to show up and be present. Now, I know many of you are at home and you think you didn't show up today, but you did. You're there. But I'm going to make a call that all of you who have gotten accustomed to the convenience of watching church from your living room or from your bedroom or from your kitchen, I'm going to ask you to show up. Because there is an energy when we're in the room together, when we can see each other's eyes, when we can hug if you're a hugger, and if you're not, I'm sorry, you may have picked the wrong church. But we're trying to respect your handshake and we're trying. Forgive us. Join us as we love one another, as we become illuminators, as we see each other in the truth of who we are. If nobody has told you today that you're amazing, worthy of a life of abundance and belonging, if no one has told you today that they love you, I love you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.